With the great Martha Mendez from the Feinstein and Mendez law firm. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's nice to be here.
We're so pleased to have you. So tell us about your journey. You were not always an attorney. How did you become one?
So I was a legal secretary starting in 2000 and was there for many years with the same law firm, same attorney. And then I had my kids young. I decided that I needed to set an example, go back to school instead of just telling them what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. So I went back to school. I started with my AA, and it took me like 10 years to do that because full-time job, full-time mom, kids and whatnot. And then little by little, I did my bachelor's, and then I realized I had to do my law school really quick. I couldn't take that long journey. So I went back, I went full-time, worked part-time, still had the kids, and became an attorney 7 years ago. So it's been a long journey, 24 years with the same attorney. I'm still with him. He's my partner, Brett Feinstein, but totally worth it, even though it took a really long time to get there.
That's not such a long time. And the fact that you did it with kids is just tremendous. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
Taking that journey and accomplishing your goal. And I think you're right. Like you in the process, you taught your kids a lesson, right?
Absolutely. It wasn't an option for them to go to school, right? Because mom had done it. They had seen how hard it was. They were there, while I was studying, and, I'd take them to their cheerleading, and, I'd be there with my books and, trying to get it done, right? But it was never an option. They had to go to school because I did it. And so I set that example, and it's good.
So tell us what you like about law.
Primarily, what I like is helping people. I think it's very fulfilling when I get to finish a case and be like, okay, I did that. I help them get to where they need to be. Whether it's, I do estate planning and I do elder law planning, I do real estate, I do family law. But all of those, even though some are more difficult than others, because, family law is, a little bit more chaotic. But generally, you hold their hand until the end, and they're okay at the end, right? Real estate is fun because everybody's having a good time, either buying or selling, and everybody's happy and they want to take that picture and stuff. So that is good. And then the elder law and estate planning is, making sure that people are set up in the right way for their future. So I think all of it is very fulfilling in its own way.
I can see that. Let's talk a little bit about the elder law and estate planning. You obviously don't want to wait until you're elderly, right? Talk about what people should know as far as estate planning and when should they start considering those things?
I think, in my opinion, that it's never too early. Most people are like, oh, I'm too young. I'm only this age. And I'm like, no, because anything can happen at any point in your life. So I'd say, anybody who's older than the age of 18, right, should think about setting things up, whether, you have a college-age student that is going off to college, and now mom and dad are no longer, able to get information for them, or if they have some type of accident or something, that may be the point where you start thinking about something as simple as a durable power of attorney for your 18-year-old, and obviously they need to be on board, of course. But, and then from there, you start to have children, or you start to get older and you realize, okay, well, nobody wants to think about their mortality.
Right.
But, a lot of times what I have found in my experience with the cases that I've handled is if you don't start thinking about it, it sometimes becomes too late. And then, there's unintended consequences. The Florida statutes kick in, and then it probably is not what you would have wanted to happen. So I think anybody at every age should start thinking about it.
And if you are in your elderly age, in the age group of an older person, is it too late? Are there things that you can still do?
Absolutely. The only time that you have a problem is when there is some type of incapacity, right? When there's some type of mental, legal incapacity where the person can no longer legally sign. That's where you start running into issues, right? Because then the only option from there as a family member would be to get a guardianship, which is very costly, and you want to try to avoid that. So generally with the elderly community, when I have conversations with them is, hey, it's very important that you set up your estate plan. Even more important is that we start thinking about that durable power of attorney to make sure that you have somebody assigned to be able to do those things for you. if it comes to the point that you can't. And so letting go of, they want to remain autonomous, and that is great. And sometimes explaining to them, you're not letting go of your autonomy. You're just setting things up so that you have somebody in place to make decisions for you if you can't.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you like doing it because it's fulfilling. Is there a case that comes to mind that stands out? And you don't necessarily have to use names, but just kind of describe for us.
Sure. Well, what happened was I had a case about a few years ago that, and this is unfortunate, it doesn't have a happy ending, right? But it's my cautionary tale of what can happen if you don't set things up properly. They had been a husband and wife, been married for like 40, 50 years. And, there was a point in time where they were on the deed of their house together, but they decided to remove the wife because she didn't qualify for the reverse mortgage. And so they remove her, fast forward, 15, 20 years, husband passes away. She calls me to do her probate. And through the process, I learned that husband had 2 adult children from another marriage that he hadn't talked to in many, 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 many years. And so we realized that she would only be entitled to either a life estate in the home or 50% of the home's value, the equity, when they sold it. And she was shocked. And I had to sadly inform her that even though that was never their intention was always that they had bought the house together, that it was a marital asset. But because of the situation, you fall back into the Florida statutes, and that's what governs. And if he would have had a will, or he would have sought the advice of an attorney, they could have informed him of that or informed them of the situation. So that is not a very fulfilling aspect, but I use that as a cautionary tale every time I'm in front of people because that kind of brings to light what can happen.
Right. And so many things that, laymen like myself are not thinking about, you're going to look at and inspect, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. So what's different that people might not be aware of? Any new trends in the law that you really think people should start to pay attention to?
So one thing that happened recently was in July, in terms of family law, right? We're going to just jump in there.
Yeah.
Is that permanent alimony is no longer a thing in the state of Florida. And so before, if you had a long-term marriage and there were certain circumstances, either spouse would potentially qualify to receive permanent alimony, which means for the rest of their life, they would receive alimony from the other spouse. Well, in July, the new statute came down and it's no longer a thing. In family law.
Okay, that is interesting. So what does that mean? That if you get a divorce, you can get alimony for a certain amount of time?
Correct. Like there's still durational alimony for a certain, amount of time, depending on the length of the marriage. There's still bridge the gap, which means, bridging the gap from when you were married to now that you're single. And there's, rehabilitative alimony. So there's still components of alimony, but that component of permanent alimony is no longer there.
Interesting. Anything in real estate that's different that you think people should pay attention to?
Gosh, the real estate market right now is kind of, interesting.
Yes.
In South Florida. Haven't seen any real trends. People were predicting that the market would totally slow down. And while it has to some extent because, rates are very high and, purchase price and selling price is still very high as well. So those two kind of make it a little bit difficult. But I really haven't seen the slowdown in real estate, which everybody was predicting.
Yeah, so. Miami's sort of a unique market.
Yeah, it's very unique. It's very popular amongst, I have a lot of people that are coming from California, Chicago, New York. And so even though us, native Miamians, think that the prices are very high for them in those, coming from those areas, they're like, this is great. So I think that's specifically where we're not seeing a huge slowdown in the real estate market down here.
I'm always amazed. I see some people, they're like, it's too expensive to pay an attorney. I'm going to represent myself. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, good luck. Not everybody can afford an attorney. I realize that. And I applaud the fact that people want to try to represent themselves. But I've been in court so many times where the judge says to the person, you are going to be held to the same standard as an attorney. not knowing the law, not knowing how it plays, how evidence plays, and all of that is no excuse. You're going to be held to the same standard. And so while I'm the attorney on the other side and I'm like, I feel like I have the upper hand, I do, right? Because I went to law school. Hello. And I know, right? So, I would just be very cautious when you go to court and you think, that you're going to prevail. And the reality is that, you have somebody on the other side who's an attorney and can kind of, steer things. I mean, if you're going to prevail, you may prevail against an attorney, who knows? But I would just be very cautious with that.
Tell us about your partner.
So my partner's been an attorney, gosh, I think 30 years. He's a great guy. He loves to litigate. So every time I have a litigation case, I'm like, here you go. He likes to fight and argue and, do that whole jazz with people. He's great. I'm very fortunate I started with him as a secretary. So I've grown. I feel like we raised our kids together. We kind of grew along the way. Sometimes I'm like, we fight like husband and wife, but it's just like we've been around each other for so many years. Our spouses are like, oh my gosh, but at the end of the day, it's a good relationship. So I'm very, very fortunate there.
That's good. And so what do you want people to know about your firm?
So I think what sets us apart from other law firms is that, and this may not be a good thing because I've had my business coach tell me, I don't know if you should be doing that, but I give all of my clients my cell phone, right? I think, and so does my partner. I think it's invaluable to be able to pick up the phone and have that contact with your attorney. I may not be able to answer. I may just send the message to my assistant and say, hey, schedule a time today when I can talk to this person. But they have my phone number. They can text me. They feel connected. And I think that's the difference between me and some other people because, while I'm very busy, I try to make that personal connection with my clients.
Okay, that's great. We talked a little before going on today about how hard it can be after graduating from school to break into whatever career. Was it tough for you to get started, even though you were already in the firm as a secretary?
So absolutely. I think the transition was hard. I think my mindset needed to be, changed where I was no longer an assistant and now an attorney, and I had to think differently and I had to act differently and, take that into, another level. There's a thing, imposter syndrome, and I feel like a lot of times when in my younger years, I kind of was like, I don't know if I belong. I don't know if I'm really in this role because I had been in the other role for so long that I was like, I felt almost like an imposter that I really, I didn't fit into it. But I've grown, I've learned, I've also, done a lot of trainings and a lot of self-development to put myself in the path where, I no longer feel that way. I'm very confident and I can do that. We were talking before about, going and doing the networking and, that is a struggle. I go and initially I'd be super shy and like unsure and who wants to break into a conversation and you feel so strange, right? But it's putting myself into that uncomfortable feeling to be able to get to the next level, which is what I'm always working on.
I think we all are. Those are good words of wisdom to end on, I think. Martha Mendez, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a strong woman and for your journey to become the attorney that you are today to represent all of us. And we're happy that you're a member of Chamber South. We hope that the rest of you will join us in Chamber South and come to our mixers and networkers and luncheons and mix and mingle with some leaders from your community. Learn about them. Let them learn about you and your skills and your business. It's always a great time. We hope to see you.